Hello, this is Dr. Natalie, coming back to you with Abiding in the Secret Place Spring Session number 2. And in the spring season, we are working on the liver and the gallbladder, cleansing our spirit and soul, our soil from all the junk that we've accumulated over the last year, so we can be ready to move forward into the next season. And in the last session, I talked about rejection. And as I mentioned, rejection could go more with the heart in the fire season, which is coming up on us quickly. But I wanted to talk a little bit more about it before we get back into bitterness and bitter roots and resentment, because rejection can actually be the basis for those. And I have been spending some time listening to some amazing stories on 2 different channels. One is called Unfiltered Stories, and the other one is Soft White Underbelly. And these stories or these channels are just allowing people to tell their story, unfiltered, unhindered, unbiased. And so you can listen to a person's heart as they talk about maybe something in their life that they've struggled with. And then most of the time the stories end and how they overcame their issue or their trauma. And as you all know, that's what this page is about, or this channel is about, is healing from trauma. We were interested in reverse aging, preventing dis-ease, which is disease in the body, and dis-ease comes from wounds, word curses, trauma, difficulties in life, generational curses, things passed down. And so listening to these stories, it's just been really eye-opening. I mean, I deal with people every day, so I see trauma every day. That's what I do because I am a doctor, right? And I'm not just a doctor, I'm a Chinese medicine trained doctor. So with that training, you use all of your senses to detect the root cause of an issue so that you can correct the root cause and then therefore create wholeness into the being. And although I'm a veterinarian, over the years I've watched the intertwining of the pet with the client. And so for 20 years I've watched my pet patients coming in with illnesses that their owners already have. And so we've talked about this many times on this page, but if you're new to this channel, we call dogs or pets frequency sponges. And so that means they absorb the frequencies of their family members, their mother, their father, their siblings. That's what we call them, right? Some people call them caretakers, pet parents, things like that. But animals are very much in the family, in my opinion. I treat them the same, and we do at our clinic as well. But I've watched this every single day in traditional practice when I did emergency and critical care, all the way to day practice, and then of course into what I'm doing now, which is holistic medicine. I've watched my clients and my pet patients have the exact same imbalances, the exact same disease. And that led me more and more and more into the study of quantum physics and frequencies, and understanding that everything in this earth has a frequency. Not just in this earth, right? Like not just in this dimension, but in all the dimensions. But we have a vibrational frequency, and we can identify with a vibrational frequency, okay? And then that vibrational frequency goes into the pet. The pet absorbs it, and then the pet becomes that vibrational frequency. Like, I can show you a family, and I can say that family has a vibrational frequency of bitterness. That family has a vibrational frequency of resentment. That family has a vibrational frequency of hate. And I've been doing this over the years, and I've watched it go from animal to animal, like a dog, a cat, a horse, all within the same family, will almost invariably present with the exact same pattern and balance. A family may have a geriatric pet, let's say with gallbladder damp heat, and gallbladder damp heat goes with anger, resentment, unforgiveness. Can also go with hatred, but all of those come out of that gallbladder. Think of things that make your eyes really red. Anger, right? And so I can watch a geriatric pet pass away from gallbladder damp heat issues, maybe not the root cause, but that was their primary imbalance. The client can go and get another puppy, another kitten, another chicken, whatever it is, and they will develop that exact same imbalance. Now, I've looked at the food and the water and the environment. Of course, all of that is affected, right? Multifactorial is what we call that. But the only true, definitive answer I have found over these years has been the vibrational frequency that a person is giving to their pet. And so I look at a pet, I assess a pet, I look at their imbalances, and we work to correct those imbalances. But what I've discovered over the years is that I'm never going to cure that pet until the family is healed. And so that is one reason why I named my clinic Well-Being Medicine, was because I wanted all of the beings to be well. I wanted everyone in the household to be well, because you can't have a well household if the vibrational frequency is operating on the low vibrational scale, which we call the frequencies of hell on this channel. We have to be operating higher. We have to be operating on the frequencies that sustain and encourage life, growth, renewal, regeneration. And so I want you to think about that as we talk about this rejection, because I want to tell you a story of one of the unfiltered stories that I listened to just a few nights ago. It was right after I'd shared my YouTube on rejection. But it was a story of a young woman who was born fairly autistic. She wasn't really diagnosed autistic until she was about 12. But due to the nature of her family, she had several siblings, and I guess it sounds like a very busy family. And due to the nature of her family, due to the nature of her autism, and in autism, most of the children are lacking a normal level of oxytocin. So the children do not want to be held, hugged, touched. And so they put out this vibrational frequency, right, of like a hardness or a wall. And then the parents usually aren't going to push through that wall. Or sometimes the parents reject the child because of the autism, because autism can make a child very difficult to manage, right? And so if you have 3 or 4 children and one of them is extremely difficult to manage, in today's day and time with the busy family and the working family, they're not going to really take time aside to love and minister to that child. That's why our world is in the chaos and the mess that it's in. Because we've been taught to push through or to overlook or to push to the side and let things work themselves out, but that is not correct. And so she had been rejected by her family, and so she felt, and sometimes, well, I'm going to say all the time, what a person feels doesn't have to be the exact thing going on in their environment. It's what they perceive. You can go back to last spring's session where I talk about sunglasses and your perception and how you view the world, okay? And so a child views the world different than a mother or a father. And so if that child feels they are being rejected, whether they're truly being rejected or not, that doesn't matter. It does not matter, because it's what that child feels, and what they feel gets planted into their soil. So she felt a lot of rejection. And through that rejection, she also had trauma. She had verbal abuse, probably physical abuse. She didn't talk about that. Maybe sexual abuse. 1 in 2 is so common. 1 in 2 women, and they say between 1 to 3 and 4 boys deal with that as children, okay? And so she began to reject herself. And I talked about in the last session, when we reject ourselves, we're setting ourselves up for autoimmune illnesses. The most prevalent being Hashimoto's. That's the most prevalent autoimmune right now in our time. But any autoimmune disease is the body rejecting itself. Okay, so that comes from a root of rejection. And so she rejected herself. And the way she dealt with rejecting herself was she began to hate herself, and she began to hate that she was a woman, and she wanted to become a man. And so she went through what we're seeing in our society today with young people. She went through and had a double mastectomy. She took all the hormone treatments, and she transgendered to a male. And guess what she found out when she became a male? That soul and her spirit were the same. She didn't love herself anymore. She didn't fit in any more than she did before. She was still rejected. She was still an outcast. She could not figure out how to become accepted. And we can't figure out how to become accepted. The only thing that we can truly do to become accepted is to know that we're accepted by the one that created us. And so when we turn and we look at the Father and realize, oh my gosh, you created me. And how wounding is it that I would reject my Creator and what He made? It's wounding to Him. And so once we realize the love that He has for each of His creation and how much He accepts us, His magnetic heart is always drawing us to Him. And all vibrational frequencies have a magnetism, which is why when you're going through a difficult season in your life, it seems like it becomes more difficult, or you attract others that are going through the same trauma. Misery loves company. We've talked about that so much on this channel, because other frequencies magnetize and draw in the same frequency, or a frequency near that level. You're not going to operate at a low vibrational frequency of shame or fear and control and attract a frequency of shalom. You're not going to attract a frequency of healing. You're not. The only way you're going to begin to be able to begin to attract different frequencies is to understand that yourself needs something greater than yourself, and not just, and I'm not saying that in meaning a higher power. I'm meaning you have to turn your heart to the heart of the Creator. I heard a story a father told the other day. I follow this dad who skis with his children all day, every day pretty much. It would be the life of my dreams. And it's called This Mountain Life. They're on Instagram. And his daughter was acting out and threw a rock through the window of their van. Now, granted, she's raised with little boys, okay? So she was probably just trying to keep up with her brothers. But her dad said, instead of me getting angry with her, and instead of me shaming her for what she did, he said, I sat down beside her and I hugged her. So she would always know she could come to me no matter what it was that she's done, no matter what the situation is, no matter how bad it looks, she can come to her father. And I'll always have open arms. And I was like, if that's not the most beautiful example of the unconditional love of our Father, I don't know what else is. And so this young woman that had turned into a man, transgendered into a man, distorted her body, took all these hormones, chased this imaginary acceptance, hits another wall and realizes, I'm never going to find acceptance until I deal with these wounds. And those wounds were her wounds of rejection. And what hurt my heart the most in watching this story was that she began dealing with these wounds of rejection, which is fantastic, and all the trauma in her life, and she began to uncover all of the different issues that she had been struggling with as a child and throughout her life. But it wasn't the church that was there to help her. No, she did all of this through Buddhism. And so we have other religions that teach people how to deal with trauma. But the church has never wanted to deal with that. Remember, the church has been the mask wearers. And so when another religion teaches someone how to overcome something as difficult as this young woman did, she's now transitioned back to a woman. And she said gender dysphoria is one of the most harmful things right now that we have operating in the earth. She said because children are making these decisions based out of a wounded soul, and they're going to regret their decisions. But she, through this work that she is doing, she still hasn't found the joy and the peace that she needs, because that only comes from the one, our Creator. It only comes from Him. He can only give it to us. The truth seekers, like herself, I know that they will always be led to the Father. I know that He's got His arms around them and brings them in. But my disappointment is with the church. Why aren't we helping the wounded souls around us? Because we ourselves are wounded. Hurt people hurt people. Hurt people don't help others heal. So we have got to see ourselves as beacons of light, as the person that has an answer for another person going through a difficult, hard time. Another person seeking freedom from the trauma that they've dealt with, or maybe just don't understand why they have the feelings that they do, the emotions that they do, the like she was saying, the bipolar disorder, the mental illnesses that they're being labeled with. This channel is to help the people of God to begin to break free of our own junk so that we can help others. Because when we do this work through other religions or New Age, because I've been there and I've done that work, it always is based on self. So self gets elevated. And when self gets elevated, pride comes in. And what does the scripture say? Pride comes before the fall. So you're only replacing one issue with another. We don't want self to have any pride whatsoever. Self is earthly nature. We're trying to move from an earthly nature into our supernatural nature, which we were designed to be in, operating out of our spirit being, not our soul. Our soul realm is where self lives. So a person can do all of the work in the self or the soulish realm and still never be free, because self is never satisfied. There's more to do. There's always more work. There's always more achievement. And so it's a never-ending, perpetual cycle of replacing one trauma with a new trauma. It could be OCD, it could be perfectionism, it could be a workaholic. So self will always continue to find something to replace the trauma with. The work that we are doing with the Father is asking Him to heal the wounds, to dig up the root of that trauma, and then to replace it with His healing balm so that we don't have to fill the void with another soulish thing. We don't have to fill it with another addiction, another threshold sacrifice, but rather we are just able to move into the love of our Father. And then as we receive the love, we are able to what? Give the love. But those wounds of rejection will not allow a person to receive love. They are the same as a soil rejecting seed. So we've talked about the spring, getting our seeds in the garden. We've talked about the scriptures where God says either the soil was too hard or there were thorns on it. They choked out the seed. They would refuse to let the seed be planted. Rejection will prevent any seed from being planted in your soil or your soul, which means you won't receive the words from this channel. You won't be able to receive a free gift from someone. You won't be able to receive the love from our Heavenly Father. So dealing with this root of rejection, or many roots of rejection. Remember I said we could do or deal with rejection every single day for 365 days a year and still not cover it all? We have to begin dealing with these roots of rejection. And then as we are able to receive love, we are able to give love, and we are able to help this generation that is so hurting and so wounded and so traumatized that they would rather be something else than themselves. Our identity, our purpose was planted in our DNA by God. It's the greatest gift we have, and it's the one thing the enemy wants everyone to reject. We have people, identifying as babies, grown men. We have grown men identifying as women or children. We have women and men identifying as cats and dogs and wildlife. There are groups now for people to join, and they can identify with others that identify with something other than themselves. This is an epidemic. This is going to be far worse than COVID. I mean, my God. I mean, I don't want to walk around with people coming into my office telling me they're a cat and need me to treat them. I mean, I'll deal with it if I have to, but I don't want to see that in our world, because I see the wounds. That's all I see is the broken heart, that bleeding heart, the soul that has been so traumatized that this person cannot understand. They were created for something magnificent. So I hope this has given you some perspective on rejection, and more perspective on this channel. As I like to say, it's not about you. It is about you. God's always about you. But I say that to myself all the time to remind myself that there is a world out there that is so broken that they need me to be well so that I can help them. They need you to be well so that you can help them. And so when I get frustrated or irritated or don't want to do something, or I don't want to do this channel, or I don't want to sit down, I remind myself, it's not about you. Because we have a Creator that the more we give out of ourselves, the more we give from Him, the more He gives us. That's how He designed us to operate. So remind yourself when you're saying, I don't want to go and deal with the trauma, I don't want to go deal with the rejection, or maybe it's become an identity of who you are. Gosh, I see that every day. We identify with rejection. We identify with victimization. We identify with wounds and trauma and disease and sickness. There's so many people that don't want to get well. But you have to say this. It's not about you. It is about the epidemic that we have going on in this world. And if you are a broken vessel and the light can get in, then you need to do the work so that you can give it away. Okay. I hope this blessed you. I will be late to my office, but I felt like God really wanted me to get this out there today. So I will look forward to talking to you soon.